Hey guys, welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are taking a look at a game by the name of Hard Rock Cab that was actually released on the PlayStation in 1996. Now this game only got a release in the Japanese region, but it started off its life really as a game that originally started on the likes of the PC, MS-DOS and the 3DO console back in 1994 and was later ported to the PlayStation and the Sega Saturn in 96. The game originally was a different name. It originally started off as the name of Quarantine that was originally on the PlayStation console, but it was renamed to both the likes of Hard Rock Cab and also Death Throttle for the likes of the Sega Saturn. So the game is it's actually a first person shooter style kind of like driving game, and it's actually set in a cyberpunk style universe or world where you're driving around trying to capture like taxi fares, all while trying to avoid conflict with other drivers or trying to take them out. It's definitely got like a very early Twisted Metal style vibe to it. It's very reflective of the earlier Twisted Metal games if you've ever played them. I actually have done videos on Twisted Metal. I'll make sure to drop it down in the description so you can check it out. This game now is very early kind of first person style game, primarily like on that era in around the early 90s, and you can definitely see it with the style of the graphics. The environments themselves are primarily like within like a kind of like somewhat 3D environment, but the icons, the characters and everything that you see pretty much on screen, like the sprites and everything, they're all in 2D. Like the characters and the other cars, they're all 2D sprites. So you can definitely see that. That's pretty much the way that games were developed back in those days. So the intro sequences for this game used likes of live action sequences to kind of depict the story. That was a very common idea in earlier style games around the early 90s, where they used to do like live kind of like movies, or they'd use likes of like live like 2D kind of like sprite images for the likes of the main characters. You'd see it pretty much in a lot of type of games, like even point and click games and so forth. But the intros pretty much, they use kind of like a kind of like a live action kind of sequence, but also used like a rock kind of soundtrack as well. It was trying to capture the vibe of what they were trying to get from the game. So it's set in a very futuristic like cyberpunk style world, and as you can see here, you're driving around different locations. You're trying to either avoid traffic or take them out. You do have weapons attached to the cars. You can buy and upgrade different type of elements, gain different accessories, so you can attach like rocket launcher or even like the chainsaw blades. It's pretty much a mix between likes of Twisted Metal and Carmageddon, where it has all those kind of elements all rolled into one, which is quite cool at the same time, and especially for an earlier type of game. Like this was before the likes of either of those games had ever come out. So you could definitely see when those games did come out that they definitely got a lot of their influences from the likes of this title here, because there wasn't really any games like this back in those days. But again, back in the 90s, these games would have been extremely controversial due to the high level of graphic violence that were in the games, because that in itself was very unheard of to be in video games. But you were getting to a point where games were starting to become a lot more adult themed, and a lot of the games primarily that were more adult themed games primarily did start off more so on the likes of the PC console. So when the likes of the PlayStation eventually came out then in later 94 in Japan and in early 95 in Europe and America, and even alongside the Sega Saturn, that's where you started to see a lot more of those mainstream games where they were a lot more adult themed. Because before that, you didn't really have that as much on the likes of the 16-bit consoles and even 8-bit consoles. Yes, you had games that actually had violence on them, and there was some elements of graphic violence to a certain degree, but you didn't actually see it in real time as you were actually playing through the games as such. Whereas this, as you can see here, like you can actually mow down pedestrians as you're driving, a little bit like Grand Theft Auto, and you can destroy the other cars and so forth on the screen. So you can get into all that kind of battles. You can either destroy kind of like cars either by shooting them or just smashing into them. And you can even see that when someone actually shoots at you, you can see, like as you see now, bullet holes coming through the windscreen. So it was very kind of realistic for its time, and it was definitely something very, very different. Again, like I said, there wasn't really many of these type of games about. The environments themselves are quite big. It can be very, very fiddly to get used to the controls. Now, I just stuck with the standard controls like when I was playing this game, and very like Twisted Metal. Instead of using likes of X or whatever kind of button on the controller to go, you used to have to use up and down alongside the left or right buttons on the D-pad to be able to move, which definitely takes a lot of getting used to, because it's hard to know when to brake, when to accelerate, and then all the time you're trying to turn, so you could end up missing the turns, or you could end up completely just overshooting the mark, or completely crashing your car altogether. So you also had to avoid like other obstacles, like you can see there, like you had like literally like mines on the ground, so you had to watch them and avoid them as well, because they would also have to destroy your car, alongside trying to avoid other pedestrians, trying to avoid other likes of drivers that were also trying to steal your fares, or they were actually running over people as well. And you could get money then for delivering them to different areas within a certain time limit. If anything, it's kind of like an early version or a more extreme version of Crazy Taxi, even though Crazy Taxi was fast and frantic, but there was no like violence in it. But this game actually has that, but it's more violent. It's got a Twisted Metal type aesthetic to it. So there's definitely a lot of different kind of genres and game styles within this one game, which was quite unique for a very early type of console or PC based game to actually have all these elements. But like I mentioned, this was just the kind of the starting point of games becoming a lot more graphic in terms of what they actually offered. But as you went through the game again, you could actually pick up fares and drop them off, and in turn you would actually earn money, which you could then in turn use to like upgrade your vehicles. You could upgrade the armor of the car you were driving, you could add in more weapons, purchase ammo, buy like rocket launchers, even likes of chain guns, or even likes of chainsaws and so forth. So you could do maximum damage to other opponents, or even to like pedestrians and stuff. It really just is crazy. And because of the fact is that each level is pretty much like open world, as you can see, you can go where you like. You don't actually necessarily have to stick to the main kind of story of the game. You can literally just go crazy, and like you can, very similar if you've ever played the Grand Theft Auto games. You don't have to actually follow the story plot that's set out for you. You can literally just go and do what you like and just go crazy and just cause as much chaos and mayhem as you possibly can. So there's definitely a lot of fun to be had with it. Again, it's hard to know kind of what to do, because even though you're following the map, it's still kind of difficult at times to know exactly where you're supposed to be at any given time, and trying to figure out actually finding where to go. And the collisions, especially when other drivers are driving into you or getting in your way, it can actually get quite frustrating, because it can get very annoying, because it can completely throw you off where you're supposed to be, and you lose track of your actual locations and so forth. So there's definitely a lot of good points and both bad points in the game, but it is actually very fun. And considering it's a very early title, you could definitely see that they were able to try and do a lot with pretty much limited kind of like hardware or software at the time. But this was definitely a step up. But this was definitely the early point of where games were actually going, and you can definitely see that from playing it. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this type of game. Did you actually manage to play it yourself? Did you even know it existed back in the day? If so, share your thoughts down in the comments below. So if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also be sure to subscribe to the channel, and make sure to hit the bell icon to be updated whenever I release future content. And also share the video, as I am going to be trying to explore and find more types of games like this here, and actually share my thoughts and experience with everyone. So as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and keep those gaming memories alive.